And welcome in, everybody, to another episode of the High Low Sports Podcast on this Black Monday from the NFL season as well. We appreciate you all for joining us here on this Wednesday evening, or if it is one of the later times in the week for you to check out sports. It is playoff time here across sports, and DJ joined as always by my co-host Kelcey. And Kelcey, what a time! We got playoffs coming up. We got a whole lot going on as well. And of course, a lot of busy things going on around the world. So I will start by saying, hopefully, everybody, whether they're on the West Coast, the East Coast, the Middle Coast, hopefully everyone is safe, happy, and healthy, and thoughts are sent out to those who are affected by it. A lot of things going on, including the fires in California, the water issues in the East Coast, and everything in between.
Yeah, man, it's a lot happening. Obviously, in the sports world, there's a lot of fun things happening, but in the rest of the world, just be careful, everybody. Don't do anything too crazy, and if you need help, reach out. But otherwise, yeah, man, let's get into the sports world. I'm excited for what we have to come because it's playoff time, and that's one of the again. I think I say this like almost every week, but this playoff time really is the best time of the year. Whatever sport it is, playoff time is the best time.
Playoffs? Well, yes, playoffs. That's exactly what we're here for. And you know what? Without further ado, we're going to just skip the pleasantries and intros. We're going to just get right into the opening part of the show. That is, of course, the tip-off. And the tip-off brought to you by our good friends over at SeatGeek. Use code BellyUpSports to get yourself $20 off your first purchase for any tickets, maybe some playoff tickets. If, you're reeling it in like that, go ahead and get yourself $20 off that $3,000 ticket and get yourself a nice front row seat. But for the first part of the show, we are talking playoffs, and we're going to start with the NFL playoffs. We're going to start out in the league. We got a lot of good, interesting games here, and we're going to go one by one. We're going to do some betting. We're going to do some breakdowns. We're going to just take a look at some things. And for those of you watching on video, we're going to minimize our ugly faces so you don't have to look directly at it, so you can get a little visual aid here. We're going to start with the Saturday 4:30 game, the curtain jerker, if you will, for the playoff games. And we got the Chargers taking on the Texans, the 4 seed taking on the 5 seed, which is traditionally a very interesting matchup, I would say, on both conferences, with the Chargers as the 5 seed favored -3 and a -150 money line over the Texans at +130. So, and we're taking a look for the betting fiends out there too. The total is 43.5, started at 44.5. Looks like mostly 50-50 for the Chargers to win outright, a little bit of a favor for the Chargers. So I'll let you go and go first and just tell me your thoughts on this game and what you think of those numbers, especially with the home team and the division winner being the underdog.
Yeah, it's always surprising whenever they give a division winner an underdog position. It almost makes me feel like they want everybody to bet the Texans, and they're just like, you know what, the Chargers can sneak something here, and they don't want to lose the house that the Chargers do. I don't know if that's the case or if it's just one of those situations where maybe they're looking at the Texans and as banged up as they are, just coming in here kind of reeling, if you will, especially obviously the tragic loss of Tank Dell there to injury at the end of the season. But yeah, it's, the Chargers, man, that's a tough team to play, and they do it well in the playoff. They play playoff football well, which is grind it out, run it down your throat. Oh, and by the way, Justin Herbert has a rocket for an arm and can take the top off of any defense, along with Quentin Johnston out there on the outside, who has really stepped up. And Ladd McConkey is not a receiver to sleep on this year. You talked about it in the lead up into the season and going to draft day, how good he could be. I got to watch him at Georgia for 4 years, and I wish I never did, because he tore up Auburn every single time they played. But no, honestly, this is going to be a fun game from top to bottom. It's competitive, and it's what I want to see from a Saturday game versus maybe some of these other matchups I really care less of. This year, not so bad, but in the past, we've had some pretty bad Saturday matchups. But this one, I'm actually pretty excited for. But yeah, Texans being a dog is kind of surprising.
Absolutely. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm actually more surprised the Chargers aren't favored by more. And I think part of that is because the last time we saw Justin Herbert and the recent Chargers in the playoffs, they choked a 20-point lead to an AFC South division winner. So that might have something to do with it. But do you remember the last time the Texans looked good when you watched them? Like the last time they just looked good? I'm not even talking about winning. I'm just saying actually looked good.
Well, according to our good friend and Texas fans and football guy, Hector Flores, if you guys never watched Hector over on Insert Name FC, go do that. Not now, but later. But he's a diehard Texans fan, and his biggest thing is exactly that. He complains every week that this team is miserable to watch, and they're giving him a heart attack, and he is not loving any minute of watching this Texans team play, other than the fact they won and they're in the playoffs. Like, that's what he enjoys. But the rest of it, he's like, I can't stand this. They look so bad. They just look like they're streaking out wins. And that kind of sums it up. Like, I really don't know the last time the Texans were that team. It feels like it's been since like week 1 because week 2 was against the Colts and that was like a nail biter.
Week one was the Colts where they
Oh, sorry.
stole.
So yeah, there you go. Not even week 1, week 0, maybe week 1 of the preseason. Week 0, maybe week 1 against the Colts. It was a tough one. So
The only game I could think of where they looked like a team where it's like, oh snap, was when they played the Bills in October when Josh Allen was weirdly erratic and they still survived by 3. When Josh Allen was like 9
yeah.
of 31 or something. It's their pass rush with Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson's been outstanding all year. The defense overall has actually been really good. Problem is, like, offensively, they've looked so not even stagnant. They've just looked completely out of sync, especially with what we saw last year. We thought they'd build on that. Obviously, Nico Collins being out of the lineup for a chunk, that does not help. Stephon Diggs going down does not help as well. Like, obviously, injuries don't help. But the offensive line has turned into, I won't say turnstiles, and I won't make a border joke here, but it has not looked very good. They have let a lot of people hit CJ Stroud. He's had to leave games multiple times. He came back in usually, but he's been had to leave for a couple of plays here and there. We've seen a lot more Davis Mills than I think any Texans fan wanted to see this year, out both in throwaway time and in real time. I they got in. It feels like those old NFC South ones that they get in at like 7-9, like the Seahawks that got in
Yeah.
at 8-1 or whatever it was, like those older ones where they
Early
got in.
NFC West.
Exactly, they got in because of the division they were in. Someone had to win it, and the AFC South is terrible, as we could tell by looking at the draft order. We don't have to look very far to see how terrible it's been. So I'll go ahead and jump into the prediction. Chargers -3 feels like a safe pick here. I will take Chargers -3. I'll take that -150 money line. We're not touching the over and the under because the Chargers historically have kept throughout the season have kept it close until you bet on them, then they score 30 on their own. Because as you mentioned, Justin Herbert can still light it up with the best of them. Quentin Johnson, 190 yards almost to end the season. Okay. Just random deep big touchdown guy. He's basically what he is. Hector's football guy, Quentin's touchdown guy. Lad McConkey, if he didn't have to deal with the likes of Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas Jr., he'd be in conversation for like rookie receiver of the year. And if we
Yeah.
weren't, having Brock Bowers and Jane Daniels be freaks taking over the rookie of the year by themselves, he'd be in that conversation. J.K. Dobbins, a good offensive line, the best defense in scoring defense in football, minus what the Bucs did to them one week. But even despite that, still the best scoring defense in football. So there's a lot to like. And weirdly enough, a first-year head coach with the Chargers, but he has more playoff experience than the coach who's been with the Texans. So it's kind of funny how that works out considering Harbaugh's previous tenure. So I'm going to take the Chargers. I'm going to take the -3 or the money line. I'll take either one of them, but I do like if you're just a field goal. I feel pretty good with that, especially some books might give you -2.5 for basically the same thing. So the field goal gets it for you. I'm going to take the Chargers in this one. I think they cover.
Yeah, I would have said the Texans if they were fully healthy. A couple things that scare me there is Shaq Mason not participating in practice today. That's terrifying for the Texans. On the flip side of things, for the Chargers, Rashawn Slater and Zion Johnson both participated today. So there goes my concern for an offensive line on the Chargers. And I gotta say, the Chargers' offensive line is one of the guiding lights for this whole team, for that team, and really they should be lauded more than they are. And I feel like they're being overlooked because it's the Chargers, it's the 5 seed in the AFC, not a 1 seed. Plus, we've had some crazy, records for some teams this year, so they just kind of get overlooked. But what the Chargers are doing is guided by their offensive line and guided by their run game. And well, guess what? Their run game and their offensive line are healthy. So it's going to be a tough one for the Texans. So yeah, I'm with you. I'm not going to go with the spread here. I'm going to go to straight money line, -150 for the Chargers. I don't think they need the 3-point buffer here. I think just going with the Chargers -150 is the way to go. It's a 52.8% win outright favorite. I think it should be. You mentioned it before. It should be higher. As much as I was hoping the Texans, I could convince myself on the Texans, I didn't. So yeah, for me, the Chargers -150 money line in this one. The 5 seed, I guess, gets an upset over the 4 seed despite the injuries and everything.
And despite being favored, I guess, like in a way, however we want to word it, it's very, very fun. But also say, I think the Texans have been good against the run, but they've been better against the pass. So I think the Chargers' ability and stubbornness to run the ball with J.K. Dobbins, with Kamani Vidal, with Jim Harbaugh's guy Hayden Haskins, who I wish I would have known was going to be on the team, I would have immediately picked him in fantasy right away just and stored him because that was just sitting in there waiting to happen. Oh,
Yeah.
and Zeke, your boy Zeke's now on there too. So you got Nice little Ohio State, Michigan blend in there, and Zeke's about to go off for like 150 for some random reason now.
Zeke in Texas, he's a different player when he plays in Texas. No matter where it is, whether it was in college, whether it's in the pros, he always played better in the state of Texas.
He plays
So
better in
yeah,
the state of Texas when his home is not in the state of Texas.
yeah. When he's not playing for Dallas the second time around, he does a lot better. So yeah, that'll be funny. Probably, honestly, just knowing to spite me as a Cowboys fan, who scored 2 touchdowns just to drive the dagger in a little extra hard.
Spiting you as a Cowboys fan is something that I think a lot of these teams do on purpose, and it might not be entirely your fault. You could blame Jerry for that one, which I'm sure we'll talk about that at some point for sure. Don't you worry. Speaking. Next up, we got the Steelers taking on the Ravens in prime time on Prime Video, with the Ravens a minus 9.5 point favorite, minus 550 for the money line. Steelers plus 380. Total set at 45.5, open at 46.5. 72% for the Ravens to win outright. And this one's kind of interesting because it is the polar opposite of the matchup we just talked about. The away team, when was the last time the Steelers looked good? Well, the last time they played the Ravens, arguably, which they won. The problem is they played the Ravens in between that time, and they lost by double digits. Whereas the Ravens have been, I think cooking would be an understatement at this point. Like they've dished out the filet mignon with the perfectly coiffed mashed potatoes and gravy with some asparagus on the side and a glass of wine. They've been on fire the last few weeks. What they did to the Texans, we mentioned. What they did to the Steelers, as we just mentioned. What they did last week to the Browns. Like what they've just continued to do. Really, since that first Steelers loss, they've been outstanding. I'm going to ask you, though, which one do you think this is going to be closer to? Is it going to be closer to the second one when they played, or closer to their first matchup where the Steelers were able to carve that one out in a very tight, gritty AFC North classic competition?
Yeah, I said about the Chargers, and I'm going to say it here again about the Steelers. They like to grind it out. And in playoff football, that is all you got to do is grind them out, outlast the other team. I think this is going to be a lot closer to the first matchup, where it's going to be a close game, probably decided in that end of the fourth quarter. I don't think this is a blowout type of game. I've been wrong about the Steelers in the playoffs before. I was wrong about the Steelers this entire season. So I'm going to go ahead and say I apologize, Steelers fans. I was wrong. I've been on a Steelers show before, and I was nice then. I'm going to be nice again and say the Steelers, I was wrong. My apologies. But no, I think this is going to be a lot closer to what you saw in the first matchup and the second matchup. This is just a game where you look at the playoffs, how cold it's going to be in Baltimore right now. It is not a fun place to play, and this is an AFC North grinded out matchup that, despite all the positives that have been going the Ravens' favor, they got beat by the Browns in a matchup that was going to be very similar weather-wise to what they're going to face the Steelers. And it's safe to say the Steelers are a better team than the Browns, objectively. And so it's going to be very interesting to see how this goes. I think depends on who can get their passing game going more efficiently. Russell Wilson is not a guy you want to really tempt in the playoffs to get hot, because as much as I have, again, given him the stick right recently, he's a playoff winner. He wins in the playoffs. And that's something that the Steelers haven't had as a quarterback in a while. And I think there are times where he can do something and be impactful and make plays. On the flip side, you have 2-time MVP, potentially 3-time MVP Lamar Jackson on the other side. And it's just a matter of him getting efficient and getting into the offense and making the right reads when he actually has a receiver open, because these corners aren't going to give him much. But I think it's going to be a fun matchup, top to bottom. I think this is going to be one where you look at, like, it should be more competitive than the plus 380, minus 550 odds that it's given you.
This is interesting because when you try and look at it, like you make a checklist or anything like that, I can't find a reason for the Steelers to have a chance. I really can't. Like, you look at their offense, what is it dependent on? Basically, Russell Wilson connecting on moonballs. Like, all their efficiency numbers out the gate. Their ability to stay on the field out the gate. Their ability to run the ball, mediocre. Their ability to throw the ball anything besides a 9 route, good luck. Defensively, they are pretty stout. They do sometimes get a little leaky. The Ravens, we already know, I think they have the most yards per game in NFL history, or they're in the top 5 for it this year. Most rushing yards per game in NFL history, if I'm not mistaken, are pretty close to it. Like Lamarvelous, 40 touchdowns, less than 5 picks, ridiculous. Derrick Henry, second in the league in rushing, ridiculous. Zay Flowers, if he's able to play, Pro Bowl receiver, surprised he was, very good receiver nonetheless. Mark Andrews, like 6 consecutive games with a touchdown at the end of the year after we thought he was washed for the first month and a half.
After I said, hey, don't just drop this guy and let it go. Yeah, I dropped him in a few leagues, and I regret that one.
It's okay. We were that your team was cursed from the get. It is bound to happen. Isaiah Likely is still out there. Rashad Bateman's resurgence. Every single checkbox points to the Ravens, except for the kind of what you hit the nail on the head. You have Mike Tomlin and Russell Wilson in the playoffs in an AFC North matchup as underdogs. And then the Ravens, who in the playoffs, minus last year against Houston, it's been a rough go for the most part. I'm still going to take the Ravens to win, but I do think the Steelers will find a way to cover minus 9.5. They'll lose like 21-17, something like that. Like they'll lose. They'll probably won't even be that close, but they'll find a way to make it close late. Like I think somehow they'll connect with on a moon ball to George Pickens where Russell Wilson throws it straight to the sky and it randomly drops like an IED on Call of Duty right into his hands like 40 yards downfield and it makes no sense. But I'm going to still say the Ravens will find a way to win. Lamar, Derrick Henry. It's interesting is if I'm not mistaken, Derrick Henry has never had over 100 yards against the Steelers. So that'll be interesting if they are able to continue that and mitigate him as well, especially considering Cameron Hayward, TJ Watt, Minka Fitzpatrick, Joey Porter Jr. They got dudes on the defensive side of the ball. But if they're going to win, they have to score on defense, I think. Or take the ball away and give the Steelers the offense, give them the ball basically in the red zone. Like they have to more or less create a scoring opportunity on their own. So I'm going to take the Ravens to win, but I'm going to take the Steelers to find a way to cover that -9 or that +9.5. That's a lot of points for how these two teams are traditionally close. Even though I know there is no reason for that. It's that this is literally I got a feeling just based on how these two always match up. And you have Mike Tomlin, Russell Wilson, playoff situation, Baltimore, Chile. It makes no sense, and I can't give you a good reason, but I'm going to still take it. I'm going to say they cover +9.5.
Ooh, wow.
Still losing. Like the Ravens will be in no jeopardy of losing. Just the final score will be within 10 points.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I don't know, man. So I'm kind of leaning towards you. I'll be honest. I kind of do think the Steelers can cover the 9.5, and the reason why is you mentioned. Well, the Steelers only connect on 9s. Well, guess what? The Ravens suck at covering 9s. They're for some reason their DBs lose track of guys running up the seams and running outside down the sidelines. I don't know why. Does not make sense. It should be the simplest coverage when you're playing a umbrella coverage, but you know what? They do it. It never fails. Somebody blows Marlon Humphrey off the line, and just Marlon Humphrey's like, somebody else has got that, and nobody else has that. And that's what scares me with the Ravens of picking them outright or picking them to cover. I don't know. And then also playoff covering for this type of a point spread just always feels extreme. 3 to 5, I'm like, all right, a little more comfortable. 9.5, it just feels. Again, it feels like they're baiting you. They want you to take the Ravens to cover, and they all know the Steelers aren't going to, or are going to be able to cover the 9.5. And so, I think with you, like you, I'm picking the Steelers to cover. But for me, I think it's closer to the 8 and 9 point range. I just don't think it covers the 9.5. So if this drops to like a 7.5 by game time, then I change my answer. But I'm going to say Steelers cover for now, but Ravens would win it outright in my eyes. It's too close to tell, though, as far as that 9.5 is just a weird spread for this matchup.
The Ravens I think we're both ignorant. The Ravens should clearly win, but they're not a team I trust to cover when they have a big spread like that. I know they've been rolling the last few weeks. I know they've covered the last few weeks, but I know they even covered against the Browns when it's 20 points, and I'm still bitter about that, but that's more because your boy Bailey Zappi hates us than what I think we'll see here. So I'm going to say, we're going to say Ravens will win comfortably, but Steelers will keep it annoying. Speaking of spreads that you don't like, we got your boy Bo Nix and the Denver Broncos taking on the Buffalo Bills. The Bills 9-point favorites with the exact same odds at minus +380 and -550. The over set at 47.5. So I'm going to start with you. How do you feel about your boy Bo Nix jumping right from the college football playoff almost to the NFL playoff?
Yeah, good for him. We talked about him being probably the most NFL ready rookie coming in. You know, he had the highest.
Hearts will do that for you.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly. The dude's 30 years old walking into the NFL. I'm just kidding, obviously. He's, 24? But still. He reminds me of what quarterbacks used to be coming into the league, is the best way I can describe it, where they were seasoned in college and then brought in. Obviously, he had a whole extra season under his belt, but he was still seasoned in college to come in and be ready for a lot of this. And let's not kid ourselves. He played a lot of big games in college. His freshman year, he played against Justin Herbert in the kickoff game, and it went into a last-second play into the end zone to win the game against an Oregon team at that point in time, which was favored to get into the playoffs, and then continue that all throughout his career at Auburn and then into Oregon. He does know how to play in these games. Unfortunately for him, he might be going up as one of the hottest teams and hottest quarterbacks right now, and Josh Allen. And it's like, well, as good as you've done this season, good luck, kid. Because here's MVP candidate Josh Allen, who seems to be playing the most efficient football he's played in a couple years. What are you going to do now? Like, how is this team going to take this on? And this is in Buffalo again. You talk about Baltimore being the weather what it is. Buffalo is going to be right in Buffalo's favor. And Bo Nix is a Southern boy, and then he played in Oregon. He didn't exactly play in the most wintry and blustery of conditions like you're going to experience in Buffalo. And so it's going to be interesting to see. But good for him for getting here. I don't know if he's ready to keep going yet. I don't think this team is ready to keep going yet. As good as they've played, I don't know if the Broncos are ready to try to beat down the Buffalo Bills in round one here.
I gotta say, we talked about it. We liked Bo Nix more than a lot of other people did coming out of the draft. We still didn't necessarily put him as a top 3 quarterback, but we all said, you and I especially, were like, he's good. Like, he's very good still. We weren't calling him Bo Picks like everyone else does. You coined the phrase the Bo Nix experience, but that doesn't mean that we both thought it was a good fit for him. I think him and Sean Payton are a perfect click. He runs that offense like a surgeon, unlike the Sean Payton and Russell Wilson experiment, which was just doomed. That's the only way to put it, really,
There
necessarily.
was too much ego for the Russell Wilson experiment.
Like, that had no chance to work. Cortland Sutton has been a little revived, it feels like, as well. Marvin Mims has been sensational. They've Even with Javonte Williams, he hasn't quite been as outstanding as we had hoped for coming off the injury a couple of years ago. He's still good. Like, they're still finding ways to win. The offensive line, led by your boy Quinn Miners, is still really solid.
Oh, that one of the best guards in the NFL game today.
Well paid for it, too, absolutely.
Yeah.
But defensively, my goodness, have they been – when they're on, they are outstanding. We already did the little part of the episode where you talked about your boy Nick Bonito finally proving you right from the short a couple years ago, or the kind of impact he could have. Patrick Surtain, Defensive Player of the Year. Don't at me. If it's not him, it's a robbery. I don't need TJ Watt crying that he didn't get it this year. It is clearly and effectively. You look at what he's done. He has like I'm not saying Revis 09 stats. That's a little outrageous. But what he's done when he's played these receivers, kept Jamar Chase under wraps, T. Higgins, like every single person he's played, he's pretty much clamped up. He has been absolutely sensational so far. So if he's not Defensive Player of the Year, I don't know who you give it to at this point. Like, I know TJ Watt's there. I know Myles Garrett. I know all of that. But he has been sensational the entire season. He's Defensive Player of the Year. Even against Jamar Chase, the Triple Crown winner, out of 43 snaps against him, 3 receptions for 27 yards, 0 touchdowns. He's been absolutely incredible. So just having him on the field gives you so much you can do defensively. He shuts down an entire whatever side of the field you want to put him on. He shuts it down completely. For a comparison, his numbers compared to Stephon Gilmore in 2019, the last corner to win Defensive Player of the Year. Gilmore 101 targets, Surtain 51. Yards allowed, Gilmore 599, Surtain 253. Interceptions, Surtain 4 on 51 targets, Gilmore 6 on 101 targets. Yards per completion, 8 for Surtain, Gilmore 11. That's not a knock against Gilmore whatsoever. That's how damn good Patrick Surtain has been. That's Defensive Player of the Year, and this rant is exclusively for me to say the Broncos will cover +9. I don't know how they'll do it. The Bills should be favored by every metric possible, but I think the defense will find a way to keep it just close enough that they'll annoy Josh Allen to where it'll stay close, and then Allen will finish it late. Especially if Amari Cooper doesn't play. He hasn't been practicing necessarily, and he's kind of a game-time decision. So we'll see if he plays. Maybe I'm a little less on it, just because that's a really good receiver who, if you put him opposite Surtain, he will cook. But I really like Denver's defense, and I like Bo Nix a lot. I do think Josh Allen's the MVP. That team has been clicking. They're firing. Best top 3 offensive line in football. Good defense, not elite, but a good opportunistic defense that makes plays. Von Miller playing his old team should be fun, but I'm going to say that Broncos find a way to cover +9. If you can get +9.5, even better, honestly. Or if you can get +10.5, if you go to the all spreads, maybe you can get +10.5 at like -120 or something. Like, if you can find it, I like 10.5 better, but I still like them to cover 9. I think it's 21-27, something like that. I think the Bills will win this game, but Denver's they're a live team in this one. They're not the worst team in the playoffs like you see here with some 7 seeds over the years. Like, they're They're very live in this game. I don't think they will win. I don't think it'll be close until the final score, kind of like what we talked about earlier.
Yeah, that's fair. It's funny. You mentioned defensive player of the year. First of all, there's only been two defensive player of the years since 2010. Troy Polamalu in 2010, which, by the way, the year before was also a defensive back, I should say. There's been two defensive backs since 2010, three if you go to 2009. There should be a fourth this year, whether it be Patrick Surtain or whether it goes to, God, I can't think of his name right now, out of Green Bay, former Giant, ironically.
Xavier McKinney.
Thank you. Leading the league in picks. One of the two needs to win it. I don't care which one, but it needs to be a DB this year. Anyways, I say that to say, what's funny about the Broncos here, and you talk about them being the worst team here, is you're keeping the Triple Crown out for the receivers. Like, this team did enough to get to the playoffs, and it took everything from the Bengals and a Triple Crown winner at receiver, by the way, first time since Sterling Sharp in 92, to not get it. Not making the playoffs as a Triple Crown winner, which is crazy. But yeah, it's absolutely insane to think that the Broncos are being considered the worst team in the playoffs because they're not. They're not even close, but they are susceptible to get got. And usually when they're going against tougher teams, what ends up happening is they tend to get down early and then close the gap late, and then they come back late. I mean, let's not forget the Chiefs game was a blocked field goal away from the Chiefs losing to the Broncos. And I think we can all say that's the best team in the AFC right now. And Buffalo, man, that's a tough team to go up against. But when you're weighing the two here, there's an opportunity for the Broncos to sneak in and get a win here. Am I going to pick them? No. Am I going to pick them to cover the spread? No. And it feels blasphemous to say that, but I do think this is a 10-point game here. I do think this is a touchdown field goal type of difference. The Broncos have struggled with field goals. And at times, their offense just seems to fall off. And as good as Estime has been as running back for kind of filling in between McMillan and Javonte Williams, I don't think he's the answer in Buffalo. It's just going to depend on if Buffalo can get their own run game going. But for me, I don't think the Broncos cover. I do think the Bills can win this outright by 10 or more, just with the way Josh Allen's been playing, especially as of late, and how much he loves to play in the snow, it seems. He plays even better. And it's a first-time playoff game for Bo Nix. As much as I said he's ready to play in these games, I don't think he's that ready to play in Buffalo in his first game. So, yeah, give me Buffalo to cover outright. So, yeah, either taking Buffalo with the -9 or taking Buffalo outright. Either one I'm okay with. So, that's where I'm going.
Absolutely. I think if the Bills are up like 10-0 in the first quarter, scrap everything I said. If they jump on them kind of like what the Ravens did to them, Denver's cooked. I think they're going to keep it annoyingly close early, then late Bills will pull away a little bit. But I agree with you. If they jump on him, it's a wrap pretty quickly. That's MVP 17 over there. You can't mess around too with him. So
I don't think he's the MVP this year, but that's just because I do believe the stats tell a different tale. But I digress. It's not that episode today.
I will say the stats last year told a different episode too. I will go.
I totally agree, and I said the same thing last year.
Which is why I hate this conversation, which is why you can't just always give it to a quarterback when the stats say it's Saquon Barkley this year and was CMC last year.
Yeah.
Everyone thought we were about to have a Lamar Josh Allen argument there, but we're both agreeing there that the guy that's playing in this next game is where we were going with this.
The point I was alluding to with corners and defensive player of the year was also the same as quarterback and MVP. It's a defensive lineman, an outside linebacker award for defensive player of the year. It's a quarterback award for MVP, unfortunately.
And if they ever got off their high horse, we'd actually have those two guys that we talked about that could be pulling home some hardware in this next game, as we have the Green Bay Packers taking on the Philadelphia Eagles. Could be defensive player of the year Xavier McKinney in that conversation. Versus could be MVP Saquon Barkley, which, by the way, this means the Triple Crown winner is not going to get any hardware because they're going to give it to Saquon Barkley when it should be Saquon's MVP, Jamar Chase's offensive player of the year. Whatever. Not that episode. We'll complain about the episode.
Don't worry. That's a whole episode of complaints to come.
Oh, it will happen too. But right now it is showing Eagles -5.5-point favorites. Open as Eagles -3.5. But with Jalen Hurts practicing today, I believe that's when that number jumped up because there was concern about Jalen Hurts playing. But it looks like he should be good to go, barring any tomfoolery in the next couple of days. I mean, the practice on Wednesday for a Sunday game is a pretty good sign. Packers +200, Eagles -240, 45.5. And a rematch of the Week 1 Friday night game in Brazil. This one played in the Greater Continental 48, so we don't have to worry about that this time. But, Kelcey, how do you feel about a team that you really dislike playing against the Eagles?
I see what you did there. But no, this is a fun game, and this is going to be a completely different type of game than we saw in Brazil. From the standpoint of both of these teams are different. They have figured a lot of their things out. The Eagles did exactly what we asked them to do, which is put your rookie corners out there and let them learn so they're ready for the playoff time. And guess what? You
Boy, did
put
they
your
learn.
they learned, and they might be some of the best rookie corners we have seen. And I'm saying this as a Cowboys fan and an Eagles hater.
Hmm.
I can't stand the Eagles, but you know what? Those two kids are absolutely fantastic. And I don't even care that Cooper DeJean is what he is. He's a great corner. He's a great rookie corner.
What is he?
That's just what it is. All right. I don't care about White Boy Summer. It's none of that. This dude is just a good rookie corner. Quinyon Mitchell is a fantastic DB, and what he's able to do one-on-one on the outside has absolutely changed how the Eagles can defend, and it's everything they were hoping for. The fact Chauncey Gardner-Johnson is not really their starter anymore in safety is great because guess what? They finally figured out he sucks, and he's just out there to irritate the other team, and there's nobody on the Packers that's going to get mad at him. Like, nobody's going to punch him in the face this round. They're going to wait until next round when then, okay, throw him out there. But right now, I think the Eagles are all set up to match up against the Packers in a different way than they did in Brazil, where we're going to see an effective offense that has A.J. Brown engaged, that has Saquon flying out of the chutes like he's just a man possessed. Devontae, well, yeah. Dallas Goedert should get the ball more. It should be a team offensively that's effective if Jalen Hurts just plays the smart game and doesn't try to check down everything. Like, take a couple of shots, it's fine. And on the flip side, I don't know what Jordan Love did, but he forgot how to throw picks again, and it's great. It's great for the Packers. Yeah. So seeing the Packers and what they do, and Josh Jacobs, Jordan Love, these receivers, I pick one. They're all a weapon. Unfortunately, they're matched up against the best corners out there. At least probably the best corner defensive back room, I think, in the NFL right now. And that's just, I shouldn't say maybe the best, but like at least top three. And they're not number three. So yeah, I love this matchup because it is a fun matchup. It has the writings of being one of those matchups that you sit back and you think this is the best matchup of the playoffs. Like, not the Super Bowl, not the championships. Like, this feels like the best matchup, especially early on right now that we have.
This game is very weird for me because I picked the Eagles to go to the Super Bowl in our preseason predictions, and they've looked pretty much exactly what I said they would do to get there. The only, like, pretty much to a T, how Saquon Barkley was going to say and Kellen Moore were going to fix the offense. And we talked about how much I loved those rookie corners, even in our predictions. Quinyon Mitchell in the draft, Adam is the highest rated defensive player. We can check the tapes and we can check our rankings. The fact that, 19 other teams passed on him still infuriates me, including that team that picked a number 15. That on mock draft Mondays I told to take him for like 3 months straight. Would have helped things. I digress. He is awesome, and there's no doubts about it. We already know about the front seven. Zach Bond should be an all-pro. He should be an all-pro with what he's doing. I mean, 5 forced fumbles, top 4 in tackles, I believe. He's been incredible. We already know Carter, Nolan Smith. This is like our draft boards from the past 4 years coming to life, basically. That's what it looks like. The Eagles have listened to us, and it's paid off. And then offensively, Jalen Hurts is going to be out there, looks like. Saquon Barkley, we already know about that. You got to imagine he's got to have a chip on his shoulder coming out, not getting a chance to break that record. I don't care what he says. He wanted that. A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith's actually come alive a little bit the last few weeks, too. Everything points to the Eagles, but I got a feeling about the Packers. I don't know what it is. They're that team that's going to piss off all that. If they beat the Eagles, they're going to the Super Bowl. I think if they beat the Eagles, they find a way to get through the NFC. I don't know how. I don't know why, and that's probably blasphemous. But somehow I feel like they would find a way to the Super Bowl if they get by the Eagles. I'm not willing to make that prediction yet, but I'm saying if they do, I'm coming back on the next show and saying, see, I told you. But if it doesn't happen, I'm going to say
at least.
That's true. And if they don't do it, I'm going to pretend I never said it. But if they do, I'm going to come back to this and say, I told you so. So that's going to lead me into the upset of the week. Packers find a way to get it done against the Eagles. They will cover that plus 5.5. I think they will win outright. Weirdly enough, their run defense allows 4 yards per carry, third lowest in the NFL, and fewer than 100 yards per game. They allowed fewer than 100 yards per game, so they were about 7th in the league. I'm a little worried about the lack of Jair Alexander for it, but they haven't had him in a long time anyway, and they've still been doing what they've been doing. He's played minimally this season anyway. They get after Rashawn Gary up front. That run game is so weirdly dynamic. Matt LaFleur is so good at designing just run games, the motions, the end arounds. When it comes to just designing run games, he is a mad genius. He makes Jordan Love's job so ridiculously easy. And as you said, he is cut down on throwing picks. The loss of Christian Watson does worry me a little bit. It's just that ability to just fly down the field like a gazelle, basically. He's the fastest guy on the field at any given moment. That I do miss that for him. I feel a lot more comfortable with it if they had him. But I do. There's something about when the Packers are injured going into the playoffs that things work out too. Like their Super Bowl run, everybody was broken going into it. Defensively, offensively, they got it going. So we're going to take the Packers with the upset. If you don't want to touch that money line, I don't blame you. But plus 5.5, I think they'll find a way to cover that. Because I think they'll keep Saquon from going full Saquon. Kind of like they mostly did in that first game as well. Like Saquon's still going to Saquon, but don't let him say quads. Keep him as Saquon, not say quads. So that's my pick. The Packers cover plus 5.5. If you're feeling ballsy, touch that money line.
Fair enough. Yeah, I'm not going to be as confident as you in the Packers. I do agree with a lot.
I'm forcing you into it now. I'm leading you right.
Oh, I was already going to do it. I already sacrificed my own pride to. Well, I've already sacrificed my pride as a Cowboys fan, so we're good. But I guess whatever's left is I'm sacrificing it here. I agree with a lot of what you said about the Packers. I go back to what I said. I said about the Chargers, and I'll say it again. Run the ball, grind them out on defense. And right now in the NFC, as good as the Packers are doing both of those things, the Eagles are better at it. And that's where I'm going here, where the Eagles are going to be able to grind it out. And as you mentioned, Christian Watson is the only guy I would be really worried about taking the top off of the defense for the Eagles. And he's not going to play. Potentially not going to play, I should say.
No, he's out. That ACL's torn. He's done.
Yeah, so there you go. But yeah, if with that being the case, I'm not as worried. I do get worried if they get their tight ends more involved with the Packers. But again, I'm not concerned as much as probably Eagles fans are, even with this matchup. I think the Eagles should win this and probably should win this comfortably. I'm thinking this is like a 10-point game type as well, where I think the Eagles can get off to a hot start. And I'm not going to say coast because you don't coast in the playoffs, but they're going to get to a good 2-touchdown, maybe even three-score game. And then it's going to be like, okay, let's just hold them defensively. They're going to make a couple mistakes here and there. The Packers are going to make a run. And then the Eagles are like, okay, hold on. We still have A.J. Brown. And then it's going to be A.J. Brown season. So give me the Eagles here to cover the spread and win the game. Minus 240 odds on winning. Minus 5.5. And if this continues to separate for the spread, I'm going to keep riding with the spread until it gets to 10 points. So give me the Eagles here, especially with Jalen coming back.
Let me go and correct myself, too, because Saquon did actually score 3 touchdowns in that Week 1 game. What I meant to say was he didn't unleash – he was at 24 carries for 109 yards. So he was still good. My point was he didn't do what he did to the Rams, where he had 10 carries for 1,000 yards. So I should preface that, too, trying to say he didn't go full Saquon. Technically, he did getting the 3 touchdowns. I meant he didn't fully dominate the game from pillar to post. He got cooking in that second half because remember the start of that game, it was Jordan Love throwing bombs to Jaden Reed out there somewhere. One gets called back, so he does it again. They were trading bombs to start the game, and then Saquon took over late. So just correcting myself there before the Eagles faithful comes after me. Don't want to be acting like I'm disrespecting here now. But we have a couple more games to get into. We'll cruise through these ones. Washington Commanders taking on the Bucs. The Bucs, the home team, minus 3.5-point favorite on this one. I think I'm going to keep mine short and sweet. I think the Bucs are a better team. I think they're at home. I think they're healthy. I love that we get Mike Evans versus Marshawn Lattimore in the playoffs. I'm just going to presume those two are ejected, so I'm not counting those two. I think the Buccaneers' run game with Bucky Irving and Rachaad White is going to find a way to get it done. Commanders' defense, while much improved, is still spotty. And when they played in Week 1, too, we kind of saw the Buccaneers, and we've seen it periodically. When they get cooking, they are ridiculous. When Baker is in the kitchen, they're outstanding. So I'm going to take the Bucs. I think they will cover 3.5. I'm going to take the Bucs to win outright. Everything points to them in that offense. When it gets going, it's absolutely ridiculous. Like that offense, when it is cooking, it is absolutely insane. So give me the Bucs to cover, even though they destroyed DJ's best bets from going 4-0 in the last week of the season by not covering against the Saints. They'll cover here against the Commanders.
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong. Baker Mayfield has never lost an NFL. The first NFL playoff game he plays each season, each time he's made it, he's only made it once. So right?
He's made it twice. He's 2-2. Because he made it last year with the Bucs too, and won against the Eagles. So he's 2-0 in Wild Card weekend.
Yeah, there you go. So give me the Commanders to win on this one. I'm gonna go Jaden Daniels with an upset. I just think why not? At this point in time, just continue. Yeah, continue this wild. I'm gonna pick the NFC East for everything because forget it. Why not? I love Baker. I love the Bucks. I just something feels special about Jaden Daniels, and it feels like he's going to prove it in week one. Or sorry, not week one, wild card week. And then Terry McLaurin, despite the bad output in week 18, terrible output for me. Week 17. I still think there's a lot to come back here for the Commanders. So give me the Commanders to pull my upset for the week here and win this one.
Absolutely. It's a very fun matchup. Speaking of fun matchups, too, we'll get to the last matchup on Monday. I think this is the best one to put on Monday, too. The Vikings taking on the Rams. The 14-win Vikings is the 5th seed, having to go on the road to LA to take on the 10-win Rams. Minus 2.5-point favorites for Minnesota as well, with an over total set of 47.5. Vikings at minus 130, the Rams at plus 110. It's interesting because the Rams did beat them when they matched up earlier in the year, and they won pretty comfortably too. I think it was like 35-20. Matthew Stafford is such a seasoned and veteran, awesome quarterback that he can deal with Brian Flores' Floresness that destroys so many younger quarterbacks and so many guys that haven't seen it all necessarily, like those guys, the less seasoned quarterbacks, the less veteran quarterbacks, the less elite guys. But unfortunately, none of that applies to Matthew Stafford. And he's got Puka Nacua fully healthy, Cooper Kupp, I think, fully healthy, Kyron Williams, all of them coming off a full week of rest. I will say take the over. I will also say I'm still going to take the Vikings. No, I'm not. I'm taking the Rams. The Rams find a way to pull off the upset too. So give me the Rams. They cover plus 2.5. I think they find a way to squeak it out. Minnesota is awesome. Best coaching staff in the NFL. They got like 3 head coaches on that team. The NFC North has like 8 head coaches, and none of them are on the Bears. So I think that's how good that the Vikings are. But the Rams, they got some dudes themselves. Like they got some dogs over there too. Sean McVay, even though he's like 10 years old, he's got a juggernaut of a coaching tree, which includes Kevin O'Connell. And he's got arguably the best quarterback in the NFC. Arguably. Very arguable there. In the NFC playoffs, I'll say at least. And you got arguably the best receiving room. Arguably. I like the Eagles a little bit more, but Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp's not too far behind. So I'm going to take the Rams to pull off the upset over the Vikings. I think they will crack the defense, and they'll get Sam Darnold just make that 1 or 2 mistakes, just enough to cost them. So give me the Rams to pull off the upset and cover plus 2.5.
That's a fair assessment. I'm not going with the Rams because there's.
I'm not even. Like, that's fair, but no.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. I'm not going to disagree. I think the Rams are one of those receiving core teams. Like they are a fantastic receiving core. I think Matthew Stafford is a grizzled veteran. But you know what he struggles against usually is the NFC North. For some reason, he struggles against the NFC North, and especially the Vikings. Obviously beat him earlier this season, but that doesn't happen often in his career beforehand. And Sam Darnold in California has a little bit of a reputation of being a California kid when he comes to California to play. He's especially a different, especially Southern California. Again, didn't happen earlier this season, but the odds that things in the NFL repeat themselves within a season are slim. It doesn't often happen from regular season to playoffs. So that said, I'm going Vikings.
I like it. You know, we got a little bit of variation in there too, so that makes it a little bit fun. So one of us is going to look really smart, or we're both going to look dumb. Somehow to find a way that we both look dumb. I don't know how, but it will find a way.
Ties in the playoffs somehow.
Somehow we'll get like pushes, even though we
power outage, just a random power outage.
You know what, Jim and John are playing on the same day, if I'm not mistaken. So you know what, that is very, very. You know what, they are playing on the same day. That might just happen. We're keeping an eye out there for sure. But that's what we got. Let us know in the comments down below who you guys are picking for the playoffs, what bets you really like. Although we're not done with playoffs because we now got to go to the college football playoffs as well. And luckily we only have a couple of games, so we'll be able to cruise through these ones much quicker than we did on the last one. But we're going to start Notre Dame taking on Penn State, number 7 taking on number 6. 2 teams that I don't think a lot of people thought we'd see in the playoffs. But the way the things played out, I think they're 2 of the best teams on that side. Notre Dame coming off that big win against Georgia to the point where they're favored by -2 over Penn State. So, Kelcey, I'll let you go ahead and go first for these ones. How you feeling, Notre Dame or Penn State?
I hate picking Notre Dame for anything. I grew up a Notre Dame fan, and every time I picked them, they disappointed me. Since I went to school at Auburn, and I now consider myself an Auburn fan, it has been less problematic to pick Notre Dame. And by the way, found this out when Marcus Freeman took over the team. He reinstated their Saturday church mass service before the game. Seems to have fixed a lot of their issues under Brian Kelly. So give me Notre Dame.
Getting rid of Brian Kelly fixed a lot of
Yeah,
their issues.
give me Notre Dame, the favorite in this one, to pull off the, I guess, not upset, but still kind of an upset by seedings, and at the fact they're at Penn State for this one, technically at Penn State. Yeah, I'm gonna go Notre Dame plus the Orange Bowl. They always have a good time in the Orange Bowl.
I like Penn State more than a lot of people. I think I've been one of their few saving grace periods as far as people that we know that talk about them. At least I don't I never loved them as a favorite, but I always thought they were worthy of this spot. I thought they were really good. I think they would have beat Georgia. Honestly, I think if they would have matched up with Georgia, I think they could have beat Georgia, especially that Georgia team that was very offensively deficient. I think Notre Dame's really really good as well though. So I'm going to take Notre Dame as well. I think I am worried about Abdul Carter, but like it looks like he's on track to play, but we'll see. At the same time, I'm always a little reluctant there, especially a guy who has top 3 pick in the draft money on the way too. If he gets banged up again, do they pull him? We'll see. I think Drew Aller's really awesome too. I think if he comes back for this year, he's a top 5 pick next year. He might even be this year, but one more year I think will do him service. I think it's better him to not come out early. Give him one more year. Tyler Warren's awesome as well. When we do our draft boards, he's probably going to be my top 10 overall players. We haven't got that far yet. It's early, but I like a lot about Penn State. But Notre Dame is greater than the sum of its parts, and that's what I really like about them, as you mentioned. Marcus Freeman's awesome. I know I said I keep it short, so I'm going to wrap it up quickly. Notre Dame wins and they cover. They go to the national championship. And in that national championship game, they'll be taking on the 2 teams that will be coming out of the clearly more difficult on paper side of the bracket. My goodness, how lopsided it kind of looks like at this point. Ohio State continuing a surprisingly dominant playoff run that nobody predicted outside of Columbus, and even people in Columbus did not. Taking on the Longhorns, coming off a surprisingly not impressive couple of playoff runs, but they got the job done nonetheless, to the point where Ohio State is a minus 6-point favorite. So, Kelcey, the Buckeyes or the Longhorns, who's going to punch their ticket to the national championship game to take on Notre Dame?
We're gonna keep this short and sweet. It's in Texas. Last time Ohio State was in the Cotton Bowl, they lost to Mizzou. This year, Ohio State on the road has been pretty good, though. Doesn't mean I'm going to change my answer. I'm going with the Longhorns here. In the first year in the SEC, they make it to a national championship because that's how things work when you just don't want them to happen. So that's what we're going with, is Texas to the national championship over Ohio State. I don't think they cover the spread, though. I do think Ohio State can cover the minus. Or sorry, I don't. Yeah, rephrase that. Sorry, Texas does cover the spread. 2 thoughts in my brain. But yeah, Texas wins over Ohio State, which I don't think is an upset, but I guess it's an upset by the betting odds.
I do think that minus 6 is a little bit friendly, considering we're going a little off of what they just did to Oregon, who I don't want Oregon got hosed by having to play Ohio State after a bye week, losing momentum and all that too. Like, what's the point of being the number 1 team in the country if you have to play arguably the best team in the country right out of the gate? And I've said that all year, that Ohio State is the best team in the country, top to bottom. My concerns were head coach and quarterback. They figured it out these last 2 games. That loss to Michigan somehow didn't kill them like I thought it would. That's going to be the rallying point that gets into a national championship game and keeps Ryan Day's job. I don't know how, but that's just the most ironic thing to happen. So I'm going to take Ohio State to win. That minus 6 worries me because somehow it'll go to overtime and then they'll score 7. They'll score 7 and then somehow it'll go goofy. So I think I would ignore the spread if I could, but if I had to, I'd still take Ohio State to cover. But I don't like 6. I don't like that one. Texas will somehow cover that, and it'll just be a 3-point game. But give me Ohio State to punch its ticket to play Notre Dame. So we got a little variation here. So we're mixing.
Can I say how mad I am about this Friday bull crap? Why are you putting this game on Friday? Saturdays only, people.
I get it. It's the wild card weekend too. I get that. If you want to do that, put them both on the same day. Then don't do Thursday, Friday stagger. Give them both Thursday. Give them both Friday. At least put them on the same day, back to back. Make it a full college slate, even if you want to move it from Saturday because of wild card weekend. But I agree with you. Saturdays are for the boys and college football boys.
I need a 12 o'clock. I need a 3 o'clock game. NFL should start at 4:30 on wild card weekend, and we're good to go.
You know what that
makes dual screen the NFL and college.
Exactly. Like we can make this work, but at least put them on the same day. That's what I would like. If you're gonna not have them on Saturdays, I still want them on the same day. I don't like Thursday, Friday. I'll be watching both of them. Don't get me wrong.
Oh, whatever.
I want it. I want it how I want it. But that's what we have for our bets this week. Let us know down below who's right, who's wrong, or if we're both completely stupid. So all those are very fair answers. But it's been a very long tip-off. Our entire show has basically been the tip-off. So that's going to now take us into Kelcey's second favorite part of every show, and that is the main event. And for the main event, we're going to go ahead and cruise through really quickly because it is Black Monday. A lot of people lost their jobs, unfortunately. We did see 3 coaches lose their jobs right after the season end. Doug Peterson in Jacksonville. We saw Antonio Pierce losing it today with the Raiders. And then Gerard Mayo getting the axe in New England less than a year. And then we know the 3 that happened in season, the Saints, and the Bears, the Saints, the Bears, and there's one other team off the top of my head that I can't remember.
In season, Saints, Bears, and Jets.
Yep. Sorry, that happened so long ago, I forgot. It literally happened in like October. So that way to go, Jets. But way to go and keep it quick and short. Which one of these do you think was the most warranted firing? We can even include the ones that happened in season. And which one surprised you the most?
I think we'll start with the one that surprised me the most was the Patriots. I thought that was crap. You don't do that to a coach. I said this last year. I said this before with Lovie Smith. I've said this with any other coach that gets thrown into a one-year situation. Stop doing that to a coach because you ruin their opportunity to be a coach long-term. And it's awful. It's terrible. It looks bad for your team. It looks bad for your franchise. And I don't care what the reasons are. Give him 2 seasons minimum, preferably 3. But I want to see time for a coach. So, first of all, that's the one I hate the most is Gerard Mayo. I understand it. I don't like it, though. I really don't understand it either.
The reason I get it is, but you made your bed, you should have to lay in it. Like, you made him the coach in waiting. Like, you went out of your way and you basically did everything short of give him a red carpet to not give him a year. That's kind of, all right, Bob Kraft, you're not this high and mighty guy after all. You can make that documentary on the Patriots and make Bill Belichick the bad guy, but we see through you. Like, there's not a happy ending here for everybody. We know what you're doing over there. You're not silly.
We know what happened in Florida. Don't worry, Bob. Don't worry. We understand. Most warranted, by the way, Chicago Bears, which you might want to keep that penalty flag out because you should also be penalized, Chicago Bears, for not firing your GM at the same time and also waiting one unnecessary week longer than you should have so he can still sit there on the sideline and wait to call a timeout. Bears, come on. I don't get it. I just at this point in time, poverty franchise is going to poverty, and I don't know what else to tell you. But like the only penalty I have to the Bears is they're just idiots right now. They don't seem to want to hire a proper head coach, and instead you're going to look in division like the Lions are going to let that happen. Get out of here for a new coach there. No, Bears need to figure it out. They need to stop going with a cute hire. They need to try to actually just drop the paycheck on somebody good. But first, you got to get rid of your GM too. And I don't like calling for a GM's job because I don't always think they're the problem. But you have to start over fresh. You can't keep doing this pivot year for a GM. It just doesn't work ever. So yeah, Jets most warranted, Patriots most confusing, easily.
I'll go ahead and just piggyback off the Bears one too, because I'm gonna say that was the most warranted as well. I'm not gonna get too cute and try and pick one of the other ones here because they all might have deserved it in some way. But that one,
unlike the Bears, you mean?
Like that one was clear as day because I called for this last year as well. You can't bring back Eberflus and Ryan Poles when you have the number 1 pick and you're going to try and reload a little bit. I get it. They were good down the stretch. I get they beat a lot of backup quarterbacks and mediocre teams down the stretch to finish like 7-9. It's the same thing we're going to talk about here in just a moment. When you have those type of seasons, I don't think Eberflus has won a 1 p.m. road game yet. Like that, you can't have that. So he should have been gone last year as well. And we do got a comment as well, too, from our good friend Morty Man. Hates that his Falcons aren't in the playoffs, but he has the Lions winning the Super Bowl, too. So he's in the same boat as Kelcey with his preseason predictions. So we'll have to get closer to the Super Bowl to see if Kelcey is holding that prediction. But I'll finish off with the Bears. You needed the fire and clean outs last year. Firing the head coach midseason, okay, better late than never, I guess. The GM, he's a former offensive lineman that has not done crap to build an offensive line that's been spotty at best. 1 pick, and it was a good pick. We like that pick. Everything else has been bad, though.
I was going to say, not a good offensive lineman, though.
You would think, though, that you would think nonetheless. Like sometimes, like bad players make good coaches. Like very rarely do elite players make great coaches. Like you would think. You would just think. But I digress. My point. What I will say is the one that most surprised me that I thought was not warranted. I'm going to go with Antonio Pierce to the Raiders, considering you didn't even give him a full year, really, because he filled in as the interim. Then you made him head coach just to appease, is what it felt like. Like, oh, they really liked him. Devontae Adams liked him, so we'll do it. You trade Devontae Adams. They're having a bad year. Okay, then unfortunately he wins a couple of games, so you lose the top 3 pick. So you fire him for that. Oh, no, he got in the way of possibly Deion Sanders Jr. coming in. I know it's not Deion. It's Shedeur Sanders. I was being a smart ass for those who didn't know. But yes, I know that maybe that made it difficult to bring him in. why do you bring him in if you're going to fire him? Because now you're paying him and Josh McDaniels. You just keep firing these coaches. And you have to keep paying them to where you don't have money to do the things you want to do. And now, just don't. Like, if you're not going to, why? It's the same thing. I'm literally stupefied for words trying to figure out what the thought process was. Besides, he won too much down the stretch. You have the best tight end in football, arguably. He's top 3 and he ain't 3. You have a top 5 defensive end in football, and he's probably not 5 at Max Crosby. You have building blocks to work around. Antonio Pierce clearly had the guys rallied and ready to go. This year was rough. You had Gardner Minshew at quarterback. It happens. I don't get it. I don't get the Antonio Pierce firing. He at least should get one more year. Unless you're bringing in Deion, Shador, Shiloh, and you're going to somehow trade to get Travis Hunter, unless you're going to make the Colorado Raiders, I guess. But I don't know how you pull that off either.
Good luck with that part of it. Yeah, no, I agree. I think Antonio Pierce did deserve an extra year, though. I think you're right. It was unfair. For me, it's not as unfair as Gerard Mayo. I think that was the most unfair, but I do understand to the point where I was like shocked this morning when I got that news. And I was like, wait, what? That happened? No. Like they weren't that dumb, were they? Because this team you didn't do anything as a GM or as a front office to help out Antonio Pierce. And I think that's the most egregious part here is you were just like, yeah, you got $10 million, go get somebody. So he's like, all right, well, I guess we're going with Gardner Minshew because that's all we can do. And yeah, it didn't work out. You hit in the draft. And I think that's the thing that bothers me is they hit in the draft. For the first time in I don't know how many years, the Raiders hit on their first round draft pick.
And their second round pick in Jackson Powers Johnson. Like you got 2 for 2 out of the gate.
And, if you got rid of your running back in the offseason, you let him walk. You got rid of your number 1 receiver during the season after, I don't know what. You don't have your number 2 receiver who was a slot god. You just let him walk away for some reason because you didn't use him enough last year. You're relying on Aiden O'Connell at one point in time, which nothing against Aiden O'Connell. He's efficient, but he's Gardner Minshew redux. And Max Crosby, I don't know what's keeping Max in Vegas other than it's Vegas at this point in time, and he's playing for the Raiders. Like, there should be nothing keeping him there other than he's loyal to a fault. And I'm not judging him on that. Honestly, if they kept paying me a bag, I'd keep staying anywhere where they want me to go. But I think for Max Crosby's sake, he might need to look towards greener pastures potentially because he's not getting any help either, and it didn't help out Antonio Pierce. And this is the second time we've seen a team-loved coach get let go by the Raiders just because.
NFL's Damian Lillard at this point. Like they need to no need to be loyal to the soil. They need to try and get a first and a third or something. They got to see what they can get for him at this point, unless they think they can redo it quickly. But all signs aren't looking too good right there. But so that's what we have for the coaches that did get fired. Now we got to talk about the ones who didn't get fired because there's a couple out. It was normally when we talk about this, there's a lot more that happens after Monday. This year, the most of them happened during the season, so it's a little bit weird. So, Kelcey, I'm gonna let you go first. Which one of these teams didn't make a move that you think desperately needed to make a move?
The Dallas Cowboys. I don't have to take a second breath. The Dallas Cowboys and Mike McCarthy. Now, I also think this is one that you talk about the front office that needs to happen as well. I also have said that multiple times on the show. I think the front office is the problem, and Mike McCarthy is the byproduct of the problem. But you have to cut something off. I think this is, you cut the tip of the iceberg off. Yeah, then you got to go clean it all out. But you got to start somewhere because this is not good. Yeah, you lost Dak Prescott after the season was already sold, but you didn't do anything beforehand either. So figure that out. You have your offensive line, which looks like it's in tatters after being one of the best offensive line for decades in the NFL. And your defense looks like Swiss cheese outside of Micah Parsons. And Trayvon Diggs coming back has been okay, but you're asking him to guard people for longer than 3 seconds. That's never going to work. Deron Bland came back, and when he came back was when Diggs got hurt. And then obviously they finally got to play a little bit together. But, there's building blocks on this team, but there are almost 7 holes on either side of the ball that you need to fill. And it's not getting better, and there's no way to be all in when you don't actually spend the money on the team to make them better. So you got to start somewhere. Start with the coach, get some players to rally around a new coach. Maybe you get better out of Dak Prescott if you're going to keep him there. But, yeah, you got to start somewhere, and Mike McCarthy is the somewhere for me.
You know what? Maybe this time next week, if they don't extend him, that might just happen because teams have showed interest in him. They've said no though, so that's very,
Oh, let
very
him go.
interesting. So it might just
I
happen.
will trade you a draft pick for Mike McCarthy. Anybody,
You'll have to resign him to do that, but you know what? Find a way, right?
figure it out.
You know, it's very possible. And before we go on to the next one, I will point out one we both agree on. I feel like the Giants, like you embarrass yourself on Hard Knocks. You embarrass yourself how Joe Shane and Brian Dabble are still around too. Not only were you terrible, but then you decided to absolutely obliterate the next team we're going to talk about to lose the number one overall pick. I feel like both those guys should be gone right now. Like you make John
I
Mara
think
look stupid in front of millions of people.
I think this is one where the head coach doesn't need to go. I know I just said everything about the Bears earlier. I don't think Brian Dabble's the problem here.
I agree. I'm saying like you take them out as a duo at this point. Like they came in together. They
Yeah,
were buds.
it's tough. Like I think he's the first. He's out the door with GM, but I think you give him an immediate re-interview, just because I don't think he should technically be fired because this team was awful all around. The Giants were. So yeah, I agree that the Giants should have fired somebody. I don't know if it's Brian Dabble though. Let's not get carried away with that part.
We agree there. And the last one we'll touch on is the team that they beat just a couple weeks ago. How the Colts thought it was a good idea to retain mediocrity is beyond me. Your GM has been there for 8 years. They have 0 division titles. If they go 10-7 the next 2 years, I saw this on Pat McAfee's show, 10-7 the next 2 years, that he will be 500. So you were sub 500 for nearly a decade with 0 division titles, 2 playoff appearances. One of them was as the first ever 7 seed. One of them was Andrew Luck putting the team on his back. And you lost both of them. You lost in 2020. That was Philip Rivers, a future Hall of Famer potentially as well. You have kicked the quarterback can down the road how many times? You have not drafted a Pro Bowl player since 2020. So you can't be this elite drafter you talked about either. You have every pick you have made has either been A, injury prone recently, or B, injury prone and bad, or C, just bad. You don't have any consistent contributors that you've consistently brought in. You have paid for mediocrity. You've paid your own guys high level money to be stuck in the middle. There's the joke of sleeping your way to the top. It's almost like he slept this team to the middle and they are stuck there and they can't get out of it. I don't understand it. Can you imagine if you worked at the same job for almost 10 years, consistently missed expectations, sometimes embarrassingly, like to the point where people were laughing at you and that you were just giving the nod of like, come on back. No problem. I'm not talking about making a mistake here. They're like downright failed at expectations consistently, which is absolutely incredible. The Jaguars have picked number 1 overall twice during that span, and they have won the division twice during that span. The Texans have been up and down with ownership and coaches up until just the last couple of years when they stabilized things, and they've won the division 4 times in that stretch. The Titans have won it 2 times in that stretch as well, which is why Mike Vrabel should have a job right now, and I think he will soon as well, but that's another story. How are you, like, it is almost downright embarrassing that within 10 minutes after beating the 4-12, 4-13 Jaguars led by Mac Jones in overtime, a statement was released that everybody's coming back. And then 2 days later, you fire the defensive coordinator. It's like, okay, what D coordinator is going to want to go there and be like, oh boy, I can't wait to be in this situation where everything's a time bomb. But then at the same time, they're so committed to mediocrity. Maybe if you do come in there, your job is safe for like 6 years. So maybe it's the most stable job you can get is just being employed by the Colts at this point. I don't get it. After 2022, the Jeff Saturday experience, you decided to bring in Chris Ballard and be like, oh no, he's our guy, as if he didn't put that team together. That failed miserably. And you let him pick the coach. You let him be fully in charge of it. The same guy whose first move as a general manager was to try and hire Josh McDaniels. His first move is that after they fired Chuck Pagano was, I should go get Josh McDaniels. And we know how that worked out. You lose Andrew Luck. Okay, you get like a pity year. We get it. That is tragic for a franchise. You should be moving to replace him right away. You should be, what do? 2020, elite quarterback draft class. You're picking 13 because you kind of stunk. Let's trade out of the first round altogether for a defensive tackle. An awesome one. Elite player in DeForest Buckner. Justin Herbert is right there. You could have tried to trade up for him. Like 13-4 is in order to jump the Chargers and the Dolphins, a bit of a price, but we literally saw the 49ers do it 2 years ago, 3 years ago now for Trey Lance. We've seen it's not a huge jump. It's a big one. It'll cost you. You had 2 second-round picks that year. You had a way to do it. You could have jumped for Tua if you liked him. You liked Jalen Hurts that year. but you saw him as a third, fourth round guy, so you didn't bother taking him with one of your 2 second-round picks. So the Eagles took him. Jordan Love was there, and you had Phillip Rivers, fringe Hall of Famer. Good guy to sit behind. Nah. It's just dumb decisions like that. You could have went after Matthew Stafford. You offered a second-round pick. Were you going to get Matthew Stafford over what the Rams offered? Probably not, because they were able to throw in Jared Goff. But your mighty offers a second-round pick. Like, are you kidding me? You offered more than that. The Colts traded more than that for Trent Richardson a decade ago. Like, you can't be this. And that was a bad move in itself.
Yeah.
And this is why I just don't understand how you could still possibly keep him around. Maybe you like the head coach, you want to keep him joined at the hip, whatever. But at that point, cut bait with all of them at this point. Unless Anthony Richardson turns into Cam Newton over the summer, you messed up with that pick. Whether it's his fault or your fault, it's somebody's at fault here. Because he has played less than half of his games. And it hasn't exactly been good in those games that he's played necessarily. He'll give you the throw of the year in week 1 to Alec Pierce, but then he'll miss that flat route on 3rd and 1 every time. So you've failed to develop that part, or he has not been able to figure it out. You have failed to make the playoffs in a decade, win the division in a decade. Pat McAfee was punting the last time you won the division. Peyton Manning was still playing the last time you won the division. Drew Brees was still setting records when he last won the division. Aaron Rodgers was not Aaron Rodgers. He had a lot fewer nicknames back when you won the division. Tom Brady was still with the Patriots when you won the division. And he had a lot less Super Bowls at the time too. How much more do I need to go on at this point? Like, Phillip Rivers was still with the Chargers. I feel like I could do this all day at this point, but it's kind of getting redundant. Bill Belichick was dating someone born in the same 30-year period as him the last time he won the division. We were in college the last time he won the division. I was just starting college, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Like, I wasn't even legal drinking age. Now I could be a clinical alcoholic if I needed to be. Which is, it's getting close if I have to keep watching them. Clearly joking, but it's absolutely egregious that he still has his job. His team has been run into the middle, and now you're picking number 14 after picking number 15, after picking number 14, after picking number 15. You're stuck in the middle. You're not going anywhere. It was a terrible move. I don't see how they change things, because every year they have what looks to be on paper a really good roster. We've put them in the playoffs. Out of the 5 years, done this maybe 4 times each. We've put them in the playoffs, give or take, something along those lines, because on paper it looks good. The culture there is clearly terrible. Pat McAfee's laid it out multiple times. He has a much bigger voice than us. So if you're listening to us, you probably heard him say it. I won't dive too deep into that, but there is a problem there. And keeping the top of the totem pole right there, it's like, no, it's going to change. No, it's going to hit. It's like playing slot machines. Oh, no, it's going to hit. Okay, good luck, sir. $38 million in the hole later. Like this. Yeah. This is egregious. This is the worst one by far. It just speaks to there's a lot that needs to change in that place. But we'll tell you right now, I don't care what they do in the draft. They are not making the playoffs next year. If they make the playoffs next year, I will register and I will run a marathon that following spring. If the Colts make the playoffs next year, you can clip it. I will run a marathon.
Ladies and gentlemen, you heard that one here. January 8th, 2025, DJ signs up for marathon if Colts go to playoffs.
I'll one up you. If they win the division, I'll do a triathlon.
All right. You know what? If they win the division, they're doing a triathlon. Okay. All right. I was going to be nice and be like, well, maybe just do one of those weekends for the race where you do the mile run, the 5K, and then the.
It doesn't matter. I'm dying in the middle of it regardless. Like, it's the end of me. Like, that's how I'm going out.
Well, I just want to tell you to look away for a second, because I just have to share this, because no man that looks like this on the stand should be in charge of a team. I'm sorry. He literally looks like he's telling somebody, the first thing we're going to do, ladies and gentlemen, is we're going to burn the bridges. Second thing we're going to do, we're going to burn the boats. Third thing we're going to do, we're going to rally around each other by burning the boats. If nobody knows the reference, it's an old saying for sales. You burn the boats because that's the only way you get team support. Well, it's also the only way you strand yourself and end up killing yourself at the end of the day, because you have no boats to get home. And that's what Chris Ballard did for the Colts, for sure.
They have a lot of talented players. It's possibly turning around, and my lazy self is about to have to get into a marathon next year. They have the players to do it, but there is a cultural issue there, and there is a huge question mark at quarterback. When you finally picked one after 6 years of kicking the can down the road, and after 2 seasons of it, you have less than a full season of game tape of the one you picked. And the game tape you have is less than inspiring, is what we will say. I won't say it's terrible, because there is some good in there. There are moments of, oh, damn, but my goodness. And And number 4, you picked a guy with 13 starts with no other plan. Like, it's his obsession with RAS scores is infuriating because RAS scores are great, but if you're not everyone is Julio Jones. Not you can't develop everyone into Josh Allen. That's why they're aliens. You can't develop everyone into Patrick Mahomes. Like just you can't just pick traits and say, "Oh, we'll develop them." That's not how that works.
It takes a
That is
coaching
not how.
staff to be good to develop them.
And even if you have a good coaching staff, that doesn't mean it will happen because those players are wired differently. Patrick Mahomes is studying while he's on a date with his wife. Like that, he's wired differently. That's not just because he can throw the ball a mile. It's because he's also a nerd when it comes to football, and it's
Yeah,
awesome.
I'll say that man has ketchup in one hand and NFL ticket in the other.
I've forgotten about his steak and ketchup thing, and that is how good he's been that we've been able to forgive a sin like that over the years. Until now. Now I'm mad at him again. Go everybody but the Chiefs just for that reason. But
one last thing for a team that's saying is for the shoe, they really suck at listening to themselves and booting out the trash.
And then they're kicking out fans who have signs like Fire Ballard and stuff like that too. Like the softness is just incredible. The Weenie Hut that the house that Peyton built is no longer the house that Peyton built. It is Weenie Hut General. That is what it is. Plankton is just sitting outside waiting to accept people and will them in. And it's very sad to see.
I will be there in a couple weeks for the combine. So, ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned for that. Weenie Hut Jr.
Live from Weenie Hut Jr. You don't want to call yourself Weenie Hut Jr. now, but you
I
know
was just going to take a picture of the stadium and let the video run and me stay out of camera.
I'll say just make sure you're not in the way because they might think you're calling yourself Weenie Hut Jr. But
I'm a Cowboys fan, so maybe that's what it is.
You know what? As you can tell, people, we know pain and exhaustion. But that's going to do it here for the main event, which is going to take us to a very quick crunch time. As you all know, too, we've talked a lot about betting this so far. We've had DJ's best bets. We've had Kelcey's coin flip throughout the year. You will be pleased to know that if you followed us the entire season, which included my somehow ridiculous month of November where I went like 1 in 19 after that Bears Hail Mary loss, it also cooked me because I was 24-6 up until that one, and one of the bets included that game. Since that point, it went downhill, but we finished over 500, 35, 33, and 2. And for Kelcey's coin flip, we started that a little bit later, if my math is correct, 7-6 on the season with a push, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. I got lucky. We started that week 3, maybe week 4 of the regular season or the college regular season. So week 2 of the NFL season. So yeah, it was close. But you know what? For a segment called the coin flip, fitting. It's nearly 500.
Absolutely, and you know it's fitting for the best bets. Mine would end up being a coin flip. If you followed for the first half of the season, you may bank. The second half of the season, I'm sorry, but by the end of it, we rallied and we finished above 500. We have a lot more betting stuff coming up. Just because football is rounding out, we still have best bets for the playoffs. As we saw, we just did our bets predictions and many more coming throughout the year. But that's going to do it here for the High Low Sports Podcast. A long episode today, but we had a lot to get into. It's been a while since we just sat back and talked about what was happening live in the world of sports. But we appreciate y'all for hanging out with us, and we'll see you all again next week.